I'll never shake that moment the day I sprinted home, clutching my acceptance letter from an amazing university. My heart racing with excitement, ready to celebrate, only to hear my stepmom cheer wildly. "You did it," as she hugged my sister tight, her eyes sparkling with pride. "My letter." She barely glanced at it, tossed a quick, "That's nice my way," like I was an afterthought. She shelled out thousands of dollars for my sister's tuition books, even a shiny new laptop, while I got nothing left to scrape by on my own. Years of being pushed aside drove me forward, and at graduation, I stepped onto that stage, unveiled my game-changing project, and watched my stepmom's face go pale, jaw dropped, eyes wide, stunned by what I'd pulled off without her help. Before I dive into how my stepmom's favoritism shaped my life, let me know where you're watching from. Drop it below, hit subscribe, and tell me, what would you do if your family bet on someone else? My name is Jennifer Bailey, and I'm 25 years old now, looking back on a childhood where I learned fast how my family picked favorites. We lived in a sleek, modern house in Asheville, North Carolina, a place that looked like it belonged in a magazine, but hid a different truth inside. My dad, Robert Bailey, a construction engineer, spent his days racing between job sites or poring over blueprints at the kitchen table, too exhausted to notice the uneven way our family worked. My stepmom, Susan Wheeler, an accountant who saw life like a balance sheet, ruled our home with precision, and I wasn't her prized investment. My sister, Amanda Perry, 2 years older, had this effortless sparkle that pulled everyone in, especially Susan, who hung on her every word, her every smile, while I slipped into the shadows unnoticed. The first time it sank in was my 8th birthday. I woke up buzzing with hope, picturing a day where I'd feel like I mattered, maybe a chocolate cake with my name on it, or a gift I'd been hinting at for weeks. Susan slapped together a party that felt like an afterthought, a plain store-bought cake with waxy frosting, a handful of school friends, and some limp balloons she'd grabbed that morning. I forced a smile, tried to soak in the moment, but 2 months later, Amanda's birthday rolled around, and Susan turned our backyard into a full-blown festival. A live band blasted pop hits, colorful streamers, and twinkling lights draped over every tree, and a magician pulled rabbits from hats for a swarm of her classmates. I stood off to the side, watching Susan clap and cheer as Amanda basked in the spotlight. I tugged at Susan's sleeve, my voice small, and asked why my day wasn't like that. She ruffled my hair with a dismissive smile. "Amanda needs a boost to stand out, Jennifer. You're fine with something smaller, right?" That answer hit like a slap, but I nodded, swallowing the ache, too young to know how to push back. Christmases were no different, always tilted in Amanda's favor. Her gifts piled high under the tree, dolls with perfect curls, trendy outfits, a shiny red bike one year that she rode around the driveway like a queen. I'd unwrap my share, a notebook, a plain sweater, or a puzzle so cheap it screamed last minute. Susan would beam as Amanda squealed with delight, my dad nodding along, too worn out to see the gap. I'd sit quietly, clutching my notebook, feeling like an extra in their show. That's when I started sketching houses, pouring my heart into drawings of homes with big porches and warm rooms where everyone felt wanted. I'd lose myself for hours at the kitchen table, pencil flying across paper, building worlds where I wasn't overlooked. One afternoon, I worked up the courage to show Susan a sketch I was proud of, a cozy house with a garden. I held my breath, hoping for a flicker of interest. She glanced at it, shrugged, and said, "That's cute, but you should focus on something practical. Your sister's got big plans we're investing in." Her words landed like a punch, but I didn't let go of my pencil. I kept sketching, determined to hold on to my dream of becoming an architect. The favoritism wasn't just about parties or gifts, it seeped into everything. When I was 10, we took a family trip to Lake Tahoe, a rare vacation where I thought maybe I'd get a chance to shine. Susan signed Amanda up for a fancy photography workshop, gushing about her creative potential, while I was left to wander the lakeshore alone, sketching cabins in my notebook. Dad tagged along with Susan's plan, snapping photos of Amanda posing with her new camera. I tried to join in, showed them a drawing of a lakeside cabin I'd made, but Susan brushed it off. "Jennifer, don't distract us. Your sister's learning something important." I walked away, the weight of their dismissal settling deeper. School became my refuge, where I could prove myself without competing for attention. I threw myself into math and art subjects that fed my love for designing structures. By middle school, I was bringing home straight A's, each report card a quiet badge of pride. I'd lay them on the kitchen counter, hoping Susan might notice, maybe say something to make me feel seen. She'd barely glance at them, tucking them into a drawer without comment, while Amanda's B in a speech class sparked a celebration. Susan booked a fancy dinner downtown, toasting Amanda's hard work, my dad raising his glass with a tired smile. I sat there picking at my food, my perfect grades forgotten. Amanda wasn't cruel. She'd sometimes flash me a grin or say, "Good job," in passing, but she didn't see how Susan's focus on her left me invisible. As I got older, the slights piled up, each one a brick in the wall between me and my family. When I was 12, I built a model of a house for a school project, a tiny wooden structure with real windows I'd carved by hand. My art teacher raved about it, saying I had a gift for design. I brought it home, heart pounding, thinking maybe this would change things. I set it on the dining table, waiting for Susan to walk by. She looked at it, raised an eyebrow, and said, "That's a lot of effort for a school thing. Your sister's working on her debate team, which will really open doors." My dad, passing through, mumbled, "Looks nice, kid," before heading to his office. I carried the model back to my room, feeling smaller than ever, but that night, I sat at my desk sketching a new house, promising myself I'd build a future they couldn't ignore. The constant dismissal wasn't Amanda's fault, she was just a kid, too soaking up the love Susan poured her way. But it shaped how I saw myself, like I had to work twice as hard to be half as noticed. Susan's voice echoed in my head. "Amanda's got big plans," as if my dreams of designing homes were too small, too impractical. My dad's silence didn't help. He loved me, I knew that, but he was too caught up in his work, or too reluctant to challenge Susan to step in. I'd lie awake some nights wondering why I wasn't enough, why my sketches, my grades, my quiet efforts never measured up. But those questions didn't break me, they lit a fire. I kept sketching, kept pushing, determined to prove I was worth something, even if Susan couldn't see it. That determination would carry me further than I ever imagined, but it started with a kid who felt like a ghost, pouring her heart into drawings, waiting for someone to believe in her. That fire in me, born from years of being overlooked, found a spark when I started spending weekends at my Aunt Nancy's house. She wasn't like Susan. She saw something in my sketches, in the way I dreamed up houses, and made me believe I could build them one day. Nancy Turner, my dad's older sister, was a retired interior designer who lived in a cozy bungalow just outside Asheville, filled with art books and fabric swatches. Her place felt like a sanctuary, unlike our house, where Susan's sharp voice and Amanda's spotlight drowned me out. Every Saturday, I'd hop on my bike, pedal over, and lose myself in her world. Nancy would pull out old drafting paper, hand me a pencil, and say, "Jennifer, show me what's in that head of yours." I'd sketch houses, big ones with wraparound porches, small ones with clever nooks, and she'd lean in, her glasses slipping, pointing out what worked and what could grow. One weekend when I was 10, I showed her a drawing of a treehouse I'd been tinkering with, complete with a rope ladder and skylight. I braced for a shrug, expecting the Susan treatment, but Nancy's eyes lit up. "This is clever, really clever," she said, tapping the paper. "You've got a gift for making spaces feel alive." That was the first time anyone called my work a gift. She dug out an old copy of design software from her office, some clunky program she'd used in the 90s, and loaded it onto her ancient desktop. "Play with this," she told me. "It's how real architects start." I spent hours clicking through it, building digital houses, my confidence growing with every line I drew. Nancy didn't just teach me tools, she gave me belief. "You can change the world with these ideas, Jennifer," she'd say, her voice firm. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Those words became my anchor, something to hold on to when Susan's dismissals cut deep. Back at home, the contrast was stark. Susan kept her focus on Amanda, cheering her on at every school event, framing her certificates like trophies. When Amanda won a middle school debate contest, Susan threw a dinner party inviting neighbors to brag about her star. I'd sit quietly, my own achievements, a perfect math test, a glowing art project review tucked away in my backpack. My dad, always swamped with work, would nod at Amanda's wins and miss mine entirely. I started confiding in Emily Carson, a friend I met in 5th grade art class. Emily was different, loud, funny, and fiercely loyal. We'd sit under the oak tree at recess and I'd spill everything: Susan's favoritism, Amanda's endless praise, my sketches no one at home cared about. Emily would listen, her eyes wide, then grab my arm. "Jennifer, your drawings are amazing. You're going to build houses that make people happy one day." Her words, raw and honest, kept me going, made me feel seen when my family barely looked my way. Emily wasn't just talk, she pushed me to act. When we were 12, our school announced a contest to design a new playground. I hesitated, Susan's voice in my head calling my dreams impractical, but Emily wouldn't let me back out. "You're doing this," she said, dragging me to the library to sketch. I poured weeks into it, designing a playground with ramps for kids in wheelchairs and a climbing wall shaped like a mountain. Nancy helped too, suggesting materials, tweaking angles, her feedback sharp but kind. I submitted my plan, heart pounding, half expecting to lose. When they announced I'd won first place, Emily screamed so loud the whole auditorium turned. My name was in the school newsletter, my design slated to be built. I rushed home, clutching the certificate, thinking maybe this would change things. Susan skimmed it, said, "That's nice, Jennifer," and turned back to Amanda's latest debate prep. My dad, distracted by a work call, mumbled, "Good job, kid." Their indifference stung, but Nancy and Emily's belief carried more weight. Those moments with Nancy and Emily shaped me, turned my hurt into drive. Nancy kept pushing, giving me books on architecture, taking me to see local buildings, showing me how design could tell a story. One summer, she drove me to Charlotte to see a community center she'd worked on years ago, a simple brick building that felt warm, welcoming. "This is what you'll do," she told me, her hand on my shoulder. "Build places that matter." Emily, meanwhile, was my cheerleader at school, urging me to join the art club, hyping up my projects to anyone who'd listen. When I doubted myself, Susan's words creeping in, Emily would snap me out of it. "You're Jennifer freaking Bailey," she'd say, grinning. "You're going to outshine them all." The favoritism at home didn't ease up. Susan's focus stayed glued to Amanda. By high school, Amanda was racking up awards in speech and drama, each one a reason for Susan to gush and plan celebrations. My grades stayed perfect, math, art, even physics feeding my architecture dreams, but Susan barely noticed. Once, I overheard her telling a neighbor, "Amanda's got such a bright future. Jennifer's just quiet, you know." That cut deeper than her usual shrugs. My dad wasn't much better, his work consumed him, and he let Susan steer the family ship. Amanda wasn't cruel. She'd sometimes toss me a smile or say cool drawing, but she didn't see how her spotlight left me in the dark. I stopped expecting change at home. Instead, I leaned harder on Nancy and Emily. Their belief fueled my resolve. I started entering more contests, small ones at first, like redesigning a school courtyard, then bigger ones like a county-wide art showcase. Each win, each nod from a teacher or judge built my confidence. Nancy framed my first award, a certificate for a garden design, in her living room, right next to her own work. "You're on your way, kiddo," she said, her eyes shining. Emily would drag me to school assemblies to cheer when my name was called, making me laugh even when I wanted to hide. Their support wasn't loud like Susan's for Amanda, it was steady, real, and it kept me moving forward. I'd sit at Nancy's drafting table or sketch with Emily at the library, dreaming of a future where my designs would stand tall, where no one could overlook me again. That dream was still far off, but with Nancy and Emily in my corner, I knew I'd fight for it no matter what it took. With Nancy and Emily in my corner, I carried that belief into high school, pouring every ounce of energy into my sketches and grades, determined to carve my own path. But nothing prepared me for the day my acceptance letter from UNC Charlotte arrived, when Susan's favoritism hit harder than ever. I'd worked relentlessly through high school acing math, art, and physics, stacking up awards for small design projects like a community garden layout that won a county contest. My teachers saw my drive, urging me to aim for UNC Charlotte's architecture program, one of the best in the state. I spent late nights perfecting my portfolio, sketching sustainable homes with clever layouts, dreaming of a future where my designs could make a difference. When that acceptance letter landed in our mailbox, I tore it open, heart racing, thinking maybe this would finally shift things at home. I rushed inside, waving the letter, only to find Susan in the living room stringing up balloons and a banner for Amanda, who'd just gotten into the same school for communications. "Amanda's going to shine at UNC." Susan beamed, hugging her tight. I stood there clutching my letter and said I got in too to the architecture program. Susan glanced over, her smile fading slightly. "That's nice, Jennifer, but Amanda's degree will open big doors. We're throwing her a party tonight." My dad, just home from a job site, nodded absently. "Good work, kid," before joining the celebration prep. That night, neighbors filled our house toasting Amanda's future while I stood in the corner, my letter tucked away, my moment swallowed by her spotlight. The real blow came a week later at a family meeting. Susan sat at the dining table, her ledger open, and announced, "We've crunched the numbers for college costs. Amanda's tuition, dorm books, and expenses were covering it all." My heart lifted for a second. Maybe they'd planned for me too. Then she turned to me. "Jennifer, you're resourceful. You can apply for scholarships or loans. Your grades should help." I froze, my voice barely steady. "You're paying for Amanda's school, but not mine." Susan sighed like I was being difficult. "Amanda's career needs this investment. Communications is competitive. You'll figure it out, right?" My dad shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. His silence louder than any words. Amanda looked down, avoiding my eyes. I stood up, my hands shaking. "Thanks for making it clear where I stand." I walked out, the weight of their choice sinking in. That moment lit a new fire, not just to prove them wrong, but to prove I could do it alone. I threw myself into planning, scouring scholarship applications, crunching budgets, and landing a job at a local bakery. By summer's end, I'd secured a partial scholarship to UNC Charlotte, covering half my tuition. The rest would come from loans and my bakery gig, working 20 hours a week, frosting cakes and mopping floors after late shifts. I moved into the cheapest dorm, picked the smallest meal plan, and budgeted every dollar to stretch. My roommate, Emily Carson, who'd followed me to UNC, saw me juggling it all. Classes, work, sketches, and asked, one night, "Why don't your parents help at all?" I forced a grin. "They believe in tough lessons." She rolled her eyes. "That's not fair." "Jennifer, you're killing yourself." Emily's blunt support kept me grounded. She'd drag me to the library to study or sneak me leftovers when I skipped meals to save cash. Classes were intense. Architecture wasn't just drawing, it was engineering, math, and endless critiques. I loved it, though. Every project felt like a chance to build something real. In my sophomore year, I stumbled into an idea that became my obsession: designing sustainable, affordable homes for low-income families. I sketched houses with solar panels, rainwater systems, and layouts that maximized space without breaking budgets. It wasn't just a project, it was personal, a way to create homes where everyone felt valued, not overlooked. I'd stay up past midnight in the studio, refining plans, fueled by coffee and the memory of Susan's dismissals. My professors noticed one. Dr. Michael Holt pulled me aside after class. "Your designs have heart, Jennifer, but they need polish. Keep pushing." His words stuck, and I did, pouring every spare moment into that project. The grind took a toll. I'd race from the bakery flour still on my apron to class, then to the studio, barely sleeping. My loans piled up, and my scholarship didn't cover extras like software licenses or materials. Some nights I'd stare at my budget wondering if I'd run dry before graduation. Susan's voice echoed, "You'll figure it out." But figuring it out meant skipping meals, reusing notebooks, and dodging campus events to save a few bucks. Emily saw me unraveling once after a 12-hour shift. I crashed on our dorm couch, too tired to move. "You can't keep this up," she said, shoving a sandwich at me. "You're stronger than this, but you don't have to do it alone." She'd sit with me in the studio sometimes, quizzing me on structural math or just keeping me company, her presence a lifeline when I felt like sinking. Home didn't offer relief. During breaks, I'd visit Asheville hoping for a shift. Maybe Susan would see my effort, or Dad would step up. Instead, Susan gushed over Amanda's college life, her internships, her sorority, all funded by them. My updates, top grades, a design contest win got a nod or a, "That's great," Jennifer before the conversation swung back to Amanda. Once I mentioned my sustainable housing project thinking it might spark interest. Susan cut me off. "Sounds ambitious, but Amanda's got a big presentation coming up. We're helping her prep." My dad, glued to his phone, didn't look up. I stopped sharing after that. Their indifference wasn't worth the sting. Aunt Nancy, though, kept me tethered. She'd call every few weeks asking about my designs, sending me articles on green architecture. "You're building something important," she'd say, her voice warm. Once she mailed me a used drafting tablet, an old model but a treasure for me. "Use it to make those houses real," her note read. I'd clutch that tablet in the studio, sketching with a focus I didn't know. I had every line, a step toward proving I didn't need Susan's money or approval. Emily backed me too, pushing me to enter my housing project in a regional design showcase. I hesitated. Susan's impractical label still lingered, but Emily wouldn't budge. "You're not letting her win." I submitted it, and it placed third, a small win, but enough to make me believe I was on the right track. By junior year, my sustainable housing project was taking shape, blueprints for homes that could change lives. Homes I wished I'd grown up in, where no one felt like an afterthought. But the cost of getting there, financially, physically, emotionally, was brutal. I'd collapse into bed some nights, my hands stained with ink, wondering if I could keep up the pace. Susan's words, "Amanda's career needs this investment," played on repeat, fueling a mix of anger and resolve. I wasn't just fighting for a degree, I was fighting to prove my worth, to build something so undeniable, even Susan would have to see it. That fight wasn't over, but every sketch, every shift, every sleepless night brought me closer to a moment I couldn't yet name, a moment when my work would speak louder than her silence. That relentless drive forged through sleepless nights, and Susan's indifference carried me to my final year at UNC Charlotte, where my sustainable housing project started turning heads. But the real test came at graduation, when I stood on that stage, ready to make Susan see what she'd overlooked for years. By senior year, I'd poured everything into my design blueprints for affordable homes, with solar panels, rainwater systems, and layouts that made small spaces feel boundless. It wasn't just a school assignment. It was my answer to a childhood spent feeling invisible, a way to build homes where no one would be an afterthought. My professor, Dr. Michael Holt, saw its potential early, pulling me aside after a critique. "Jennifer, this could change lives. Refine it, and it's award-worthy." His words lit a fire, and I pushed harder, spending late nights in the studio, tweaking every detail, fueled by the belief that my work could matter. The project caught more than Dr. Holt's eye. By spring, it won a university design challenge, earning a spot in a regional showcase. Word spread, and David Lawson, CEO of a major architecture firm, reached out wanting to see my plans in action. I kept it quiet, didn't tell Susan, Dad, or Amanda, knowing they'd brush it off as another cute hobby. Instead, I worked with UNC's commencement team, arranging for my project to be highlighted at graduation. They were thrilled. An undergraduate with a game-changing design was a story they wanted to tell. "We'll announce it during the ceremony," the dean promised. You'll have a moment to speak." I nodded, my heart pounding, not just for the recognition, but for the chance to stand in front of Susan and show her what I'd built without her help. Graduation morning dawned bright, the UNC campus buzzing with families and graduates in black gowns. I woke early, nerves twisting in my stomach, not from stage fright, but from what was coming. Susan, Dad, and Amanda were in town mostly to celebrate Amanda's communications degree. Susan had texted, "We'll try to make your ceremony, but Amanda's event is right after." That try stung, echoing years of being second place. I dressed carefully, a tailored gray dress under my gown, projecting the confidence I'd fought to earn. Emily, my rock, helped pin my honor cords, joking, "You're about to drop a bomb on them, Jennifer." I managed to smile. That's the plan. Deep down, I wasn't sure how I'd feel when Susan saw me. Would I be cold, triumphant, or something else? I decided to let the moment decide. At the ceremony, I sat among the architecture graduates, scanning the crowd for my family. Susan and Dad were there, dressed up, Susan in a floral dress, Dad in a suit with a UNC tie, chatting with Amanda, who looked radiant in her gown. They hadn't spotted me yet, their eyes fixed on the program, probably skimming for Amanda's name. My pulse raced as the opening speeches dragged on, each minute building the tension. Finally, the dean took the podium for special recognitions. "Today, we honor a student whose work exemplifies innovation and impact," she began. "Would Jennifer Bailey please join me on stage?" I stood legs steady despite the adrenaline and walked to the podium, every step deliberate, every glance forward. From the stage, I saw Susan's head snap up, her face shifting from boredom to confusion. The dean's voice rang out, "Jennifer Bailey, graduating with highest honors in architecture, has designed a revolutionary set of sustainable homes for low-income families, capable of transforming communities with affordable, eco-friendly living." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Susan leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. In recognition of this achievement, the dean continued, "Jennifer is the recipient of the Design Innovation Award, one of the highest honors for undergraduate work in our field. Furthermore, her project has secured a partnership with Lawson Architecture, a $3,500,000 deal to bring these homes to life." The applause swelled louder, sharper, some rising to their feet. Susan's mouth fell open, her face paling, jaw slack, eyes wide, frozen in shock. Dad's hands paused mid-clap, his expression stunned. Amanda beside them broke into a grin, clapping fiercely. The dean turned to me. "Jennifer, would you like to say a few words?" I stepped to the microphone, my speech memorized but alive with the moment. I looked out at the crowd, locking eyes with Susan, her pale face a silent confession. 4 years ago, I began, my voice clear. I came to UNC Charlotte with nothing but determination. No financial support from my family, just loans, late-night shifts at a bakery, and a belief that my work could matter. I built this project through countless nights in the studio, driven by a vision of homes where everyone feels valued. Susan shifted in her seat, her hands gripping her purse. "I'm grateful to those who saw my potential, my Aunt Nancy, my friend Emily, my professor, Dr. Holt. They believed in me when others didn't." I paused, letting the omission of my family hang heavy. This award, this partnership, they're proof that perseverance can turn dreams into reality, even when the people closest to you bet against you. The crowd erupted, many standing again. Emily's cheer cutting through the noise. Susan sat motionless, her face drained of color, Dad staring at the floor, Amanda still smiling, her eyes glistening. The rest of the ceremony blurred my name, called for my diploma, the applause louder than for others. After it ended, I waded through well-wishers, classmates, professors, even Dr. Holt, who hugged me. "You did it, Jennifer." Emily found me next, nearly tackling me. "You killed it up there." Before I could reply, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Susan stood there, her makeup smudged, Dad and Amanda behind her. Susan's voice wavered. "Jennifer, we had no idea. This is incredible. Congratulations." Dad cleared his throat. I'm proud of you, kid. Amanda stepped forward, her voice soft. I always knew you were amazing, Jen. I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner. Their words hit me, but not like I'd imagined. Years ago, I'd craved their approval, their regret, but now it felt hollow. I looked at Susan, my voice calm but firm. Would it have mattered if I told you? You made it clear my dreams weren't worth your time. Amanda's were. Susan flinched, her eyes darting away. We thought you were fine on your own, so capable. I cut her off. Capable doesn't mean I didn't need support. Imagine what I could have done without scraping by, without carrying the weight of your indifference. Dad stepped closer, his face pained. We messed up, Jennifer. Amanda nodded. I should have spoken up. You deserved better. I took a breath, steadying myself. I didn't need your money to get here, and I don't need your pride now. But if you want to know me, not just this moment but who I am, we start by being honest about the past. Susan's eyes welled up, but she nodded. Dad muttered, We'll make time. Amanda reached for my hand. Let's talk soon. Okay? I didn't promise anything. Years of hurt wouldn't vanish in one conversation. Emily, watching nearby, gave me a nod. You good? I nodded back. Yeah, I am. Dr. Holt called me over for a photo with the dean, and I walked away, leaving Susan's pale face behind, stepping into a future where my work, not their approval, defined me. That stage, that moment, it wasn't just a victory. It was the start of something bigger, something I'd built on my own terms. That moment on the stage wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a life I'd built without Susan's approval, a life where my worth didn't hinge on her seeing me. The day after graduation, I met Susan, Dad, and Amanda at a quiet cafe near UNC Charlotte's campus. The air was thick with tension. Susan's eyes still red from the ceremony, Dad fiddling with his coffee cup, Amanda picking at her napkin. Susan started first, her voice shaky. Jennifer, we were wrong. Your achievement. It's incredible. We want to make things right. Dad nodded. I should have stepped up sooner. I'm sorry, kid. Amanda looked at me, her eyes soft. I never meant to take your light, Jen. You're amazing. Their words stirred something. Part of me had waited years for this, but they landed differently now. I didn't need their apologies to feel whole. I leaned back, keeping my voice steady. I'm glad you're saying this, but it's not enough. You chose Amanda over me every birthday, every Christmas, her tuition over mine. I don't need your regret now. I need you to know who I am, not just what I've done. Susan's face crumpled, but she nodded. We'll try, Jennifer. We want to be part of your life. Dad added. We can stay longer. Talk more. Amanda reached for my hand. Let's start over, okay? I pulled back gently. I'm not ready for that. If we're going to rebuild, it's on my terms, honest, no pretending the past didn't happen. They exchanged glances, quiet, and I left it there. A door cracked open, but not wide. Walking away from that cafe, I felt lighter, not because we'd fixed things, but because I'd set my boundaries. I didn't owe them forgiveness, not yet. Instead, I focused on what came next. A week later, I signed with Lawson Architecture as a junior designer, stepping into a sleek Charlotte office where my sustainable housing project was already sparking meetings. David Lawson, the CEO, shook my hand. Your designs are going to reshape communities, Jennifer. Let's get to work. We pushed the project forward, refining blueprints, testing materials, aiming to build the first homes within 18 months. Every meeting, every draft felt like a victory, not just for me, but for the families who'd live in those houses, places where no one would feel overlooked. My first paycheck felt surreal, real money after years of scraping by. I paid off a chunk of my student loans, a weightlifting with every digit cleared. Then I bought a small condo in Charlotte, nothing fancy but mine, with a drafting table by the window where I sketched late into the night. But the biggest move came 6 months later, when I used part of my signing bonus to start the Nancy Turner Scholarship at UNC Charlotte. Named for my aunt who'd seen my spark when I was just a kid. It supported architecture students with financial need, kids like me who dreamed big, but had no safety net. When I told Nancy, her voice cracked over the phone. "I'm so proud, Jennifer. You're giving others what I gave you." Susan and Dad asked to contribute to the fund. Dad's voice hesitant. "Would you let us help?" I paused, then said, "Maybe one day, but this is mine to build." It was a small step, but it felt right, my way of honoring Nancy, not their guilt. Work consumed me, but in the best way. The housing project grew. Our first prototype broke ground in a low-income Charlotte neighborhood, a small house with solar panels gleaming under the sun. Dr. Michael Holt, now a mentor, visited the site. "This is why we teach, Jennifer. You're making a difference." Emily Still, my rock, came to cracking jokes about my hard hat, but tearing up when she saw the house. "You did this," she said, hugging me tight. Those moments standing on that dirt lot, seeing my designs take shape, were proof I'd built something bigger than Susan's indifference. My family wasn't out of the picture, but we moved slowly. Susan sent texts, awkward at first, asking about my work, my life. I replied sparingly, testing their effort. Dad called monthly, his voice softer, asking about my designs. Once he even read an article on sustainable housing to keep up. Amanda visited Charlotte once over coffee and opened up. "Growing up, I felt pressure to be perfect for them. It wasn't fair to you, Jen. I'm sorry." Her words surprised me. Favoritism hurt us both just differently. We didn't hug it out, but we agreed to talk again. I wasn't ready to trust them fully. Years of neglect don't vanish, but I left the door ajar, curious where it might lead. The biggest shift wasn't with them, it was in me. I started speaking at schools, sharing my story with kids who felt overlooked. At one high school, a girl approached me, her voice quiet. "My parents say, architecture's a waste for girls. They want me to do business." I saw myself in her, those years of Susan's shrugs, and knelt down. "Their doubts don't define you," I said. "Keep drawing, use their words as fuel." Her nod, small but fierce, stayed with me. That's when I knew my worth wasn't tied to Susan's approval or anyone's. It came from the homes I'd build, the kids I'd inspire, the life I'd carved on my own terms. 2 years after graduation, the first family moved into one of my houses, a single mom and her 2 kids, their smiles wide as they stepped inside. I stood outside, watching my chest tight with something deeper than pride. This was why I'd fought. Why every late shift, every loan, every ignored sketch was worth it. If you're watching this and feeling unseen by your family, your friends, anyone, know this: their blindness doesn't measure your value. Find your spark, hold it tight, and build something they can't ignore. What's your story? Drop it in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated? How'd you push through? Hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, and let's keep this conversation going. Thanks for hearing me out now. Go make your dreams louder than their doubts.